Hey everybody, welcome to Cheeseology with Adam. In this video we're going to be making a homemade cream cheese. So stick around and we'll jump right in. Okay, for this video you're going to need the following list of ingredients. This recipe we're going to need calcium chloride, rennet, I use animal rennet for my coagulation, salt, and a pack of C21 Buttermilk Culture. Okay, so this cheese is going to take about 2 days to make. There's no pressing and nothing like that. It's a very easy cheese to make. The reason it takes 2 days is because once we put our milk in and our rennet and our bacteria culture, we're going to let it set for almost 24 hours to ripen. So what's happening during that period is the bacteria culture is working on the lactose, the milk sugar, and converting that to lactic acid. You don't have to have a pH meter. I do. We want to have the pH around 5. For the final ripening, but again, you can judge it by how much water is laying on top of the curd. So what I mean by that is we're going to mix our rennet and bacteria culture in at the same time, which is different than how we usually process cheese. Usually we put the bacteria culture in, let that ripen for sometimes an hour, half an hour, depending on what kind of cheese it is, and then we stir our rennet in to get that coagulation to form that curd. For this cheese, we're going to add our bacteria culture, as I mentioned, the C21 Buttermilk Culture, and then we're also going to add our rennet right away. And then we're going to cover it up, let it sit for, we'll check it in 12 hours to see how it looks, but if you don't have a pH meter, you can tell when it's ready to be cut and ready to be strained, when water or whey starts to pool on top of the curd itself. So you'll initially see it start to separate from the sides of the pot. You'll see a couple small little areas where whey is on top. By the time we're ready to cut, you should see a thin layer of whey on top of that curd. So let's pour our milk in, let's put our heat on, and let's heat this up to 86 degrees, and then we'll add our bacteria and our rennet and our calcium chloride, and we'll be good to go till tomorrow. Okay, we're going to start by just adding our 1 gallon of milk. All right, now what I'll do is I'll turn on my heat and I'll put my thermometer in, and we will raise this temperature to 86 degrees, and then we will proceed to the next step, which will be putting the bacteria culture and the rennet in. Okay, we're just about at our 86 degrees. Actually, we are. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this off of my heat source because my electric heat source keeps heating up even though I shut it off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of calcium chloride. I'm adding that because I'm using pasteurized milk. This will help with the curd formation. The proteins are affected during the pasteurization process. So I'm adding a 1/4 teaspoon of calcium chloride. We want to mix that up real good. Now I'm going to add my starter culture, my bacteria culture, the C21 Buttermilk Culture, and I'm just going to sprinkle this on top. I'm going to sprinkle it around. You want to let it sit for about a minute or two to rehydrate so it doesn't clump up on you when you stir it in. So just sprinkle that all around the top, let it sit for about 2 minutes, and then we will mix that in. Okay, we're going to stir our culture in right now. And you side-to-side motions. You don't want to be splashing it around. It's a gentle process. Our milk's nice and warm, so it's not going to be bubbling or anything like that. Now, what's different about this is, at this point, for any other cheese, just about, we would let this ripen and then come back in about an hour, 45 minutes, whatever it calls for, and then add our rennet. For this cheese, for this cream cheese, we are going to add our rennet right now. So, don't need to measure this out, but we want to do about 4 to 6 drops of single strength animal rennet. That's what I use. And I put 6 drops in all around, and now I'm going to stir that in real well. So you need the extended ripening time because we're only using a very little bit of rennet. And what this will do is it will give the culture enough time to ripen and get to that about 5.0 pH that we're looking for this cheese. Okay, now that we've added our calcium chloride, our culture, and our rennet, all we're going to do now is cover it up and let it sit for about 12 to 24 hours. So if you have a pH meter, you can check this maybe in about 12 hours or so. But if you don't, like I said, you just look for the pooling of whey on top of the curd. So we'll check this here. I'll check this in 12 hours and then we'll go from there. Okay, it's the next morning. It's been about 12 hours or so. I have a pH meter. I tested this. We're right about 5.0. You want to be between 4.9 or 5.1. If you don't have a pH meter, that's fine. You can judge if the curd is ready to be ladled into your strainer with cheesecloth. If there's whey on top of the curd, and also it should separate a little bit from the sides. It should look just like this. Okay, now all we want to do is, we're not cutting the curd with this cheese. We're just going to ladle it into a colander. So we're just going to take our slotted spoon and we're just going to start scooping it out. And I have my colander in a bucket because I'm doing this in my garage as I normally make cheese. But you can just, if you want to keep the whey, you can put it into a container or just let it drain in your sink, whichever you prefer. So you're going to see this is a very wet curd. So after we ladle this in, we're going to let this drain for about 2 hours, 1 to 2 hours. Might want to move it around a little bit by pulling up the edges of the cheesecloth every so often. But you want to let it drain for about 2 hours. And then after that, we'll pull up the corners and we'll hang the cheese for about 24 hours. So let's ladle all this in and then we'll let it drain for a couple hours. And then we'll come back and we will hang the cheese. Okay, we've let our curd drain in our colander for about 2 hours. Then what we do is we bundle up the 4 corners of your cheesecloth and you want to hang the curd. This is going to let it dry out to the consistency you want for the final product. It takes about 24 hours, so I would check it about every 3 or 4 hours. You can unbundle it, stir it around a little bit, and then bundle it back up. That'll help it drain a little bit more. You don't have to do that. It'll just take longer to drain and dry out. But towards the end of that, when you think you're getting close to the final consistency that you want to add a teaspoon of salt. So we'll let this set for another 24 hours, or I'll check it probably in about 18 to 20 hours. Stirring every so often in between there, and then we'll see what we have. All right, as you saw, after we let our curd hang for about 24 hours, again, once in a while, maybe 2 or 3 times during that period, I took it down, stirred it up a little bit, and rehung it just so it could drain a little bit better. But after those 24 hours, we had a great consistency that I was happy with. And I just put it in the bowl, took a spoon and just kind of stirred it up, get it all stirred up real well, and then we're ready to eat. From there, you can add anything you want. Now, I did take about half of this batch and I added fresh chives to them. But you can add any kind of spices or fruit or whatever you want to do. Get creative. So as you can see, this is a real easy cheese to make. Only took 2 days. This turned out excellent. Hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, happy cheese making.